Okay, we're getting into part 5 now, is it here, of the racist website, realhistory.com, realhistorywww.com, and all of their falsities they have. And kind of the reason that I'm not just debunking 5 or 6 things and showing you they're it and trashing it is that he has huge pages here of information that have nothing to do with black people whatsoever, and he keeps showing it all, and then he just keeps saying white man and that we're albino Negroes is what we are, you see. But every once in a while he keeps throwing back in, and they were black. So he can't make up his mind on whether they're albino Negroes or not, and it's kind of confusing for himself to make up the lie, but he's hoping with all this conjecture you'll just kind of get lost in it. So right now we're just at the point where he starts talking offensively about Turkish people and Jews and calling everybody out that's from the Bible, which he tries to claim that he's from, but black people aren't even mentioned in. He says, but many consider the most offensive the Turkish tribe, the Khazars' assumption of the Hebrew identity, they not even having much in the way of admixture with blacks. Well, of course not. There are no blacks in the Bible, not a single one, not even Ham. Of course, it wasn't Ham that was cursed, it was Canaan, but no, there's none. And if there's just one that's cursed, then who would he marry? And make a mulatto, and there we go. And that's been debunked so long ago, it's not even funny. And of course, if you look up Hamites, it's North African Caucasians and Egyptians, and it calls out the Egyptians as Caucasians in there, but black people don't want to hear that. They want to hear that West African primitives somehow are related to all of these people, and that they were out running around lollygagging, which is not true. And it causes a lot of racism. That's the reason for these videos and things too, is it causes a reverse racism. They actually are making up lies and then getting all wound up about them, and that causes them to react. And you can see how this goes while everybody else is just staring and looking at them like, what? Anyhow, so he throws that in there, and of course there are no blacks. And he says, now they are no longer Turkic Khazars, but rather they are now Jews. This, of course, was made easy by earlier whites who had taken to portraying the Hebrew Jesus Christian as Christ as a white man. And Jesus is a Hebrew Gala priest, and Nazarites, they're known to grow their hair long out of a sacred thing that they would do. And it even goes in the Samson myth, who's also a Nazarite. They talk about him being ivory skinned, pale, pure as snow, and a bunch of other things that they speak about them, that they are the priests that keep themselves inside. They don't go out in the sun very much. They're a pale people, and you can see all the dress that the priests wore back then and how they covered a whole lot, and it's almost this Jedi thing where they're covering your body, and you wonder why they're covering up ladies with burqas and stuff, and it's also to keep them pale too. There's this edict of Caucasian people that's still alive in some of the societies today to have their women pale and them to be dark. They show that they are actually out doing the work and things, and the women are pale. Now, a lot of societies, especially Western ones, women want to get a tan. It's a sign that they were able to go on vacation and do things like that. So it's a little bit different of an idealism, and people can't quite cognate what was going on at the time. But even in the Bible, she actually... one phrase that blacks like to use to say that blacks are in the Bible is, forgive me, Israel, for I am dark, yet I am comely. And so they go, oh, she was black. And it's like, no, she's not black. In fact, she's actually apologizing for being tanned. The next sentence shows you, she says, for the sun hath looked upon me. And the word there is shamash, and that's the sun god, by the way, hath looked upon me. My brothers made me work in the vineyards and so on, and so she became tanned by being out in the sun. It clearly states it, but they never want to mention the second part of it, even though they know it. So you can tell that they know, but they're going to try to interject. It's kind of disgusting whenever you realize that they know and they're still trying. It's a mental problem. It's really a problem. So the difference between what a Jew is doesn't really matter, because there's 12 tribes of Hebrews, and if you look at those are all the Caucasians of the world right there in that area. When they talked about the nations, they were talking about none other. They don't talk about India or Amerindians or any of those people, because they're not involved. They're not part of the nations. They're not part of any of that. And they never mentioned Sudan, much less anything below the Sahara that nobody knew existed. Look at Herodotus' maps. They don't even know it exists. Let's get on with this. It must also be mentioned that not all whites subscribe to this bogus and wickedly racist contrivance that whites call history. C. Loring Brace, an anthropologist at the University of Michigan, in his study, The Questionable Contribution of the Neolithic and Bronze Age to European Cranial Form. Ooh, he didn't even read it, I guarantee it, or he wouldn't have this on here. Does say that the original Europeans were black people. No, he does not. But honestly, he is so mealy-mouthed in saying it as to make of little use for those seeking the truth. The mealy-mouthed title of the study says it all. Oh man, should I even click the link to the study here? There's nothing about Negroids in this whatsoever. And here it is, Loring Brace and stuff, and he wants to create that 24 cranial measurements run across Bronze Age and stuff. Let's see if I just, Mediterranean Europeans crossed by Basque Canary Islands, Cro-Magnon reassessment. There you go. It's nothing to do with Negroids here. Neolithic arose about Europe 6,500 years ago. Cultural diffusion. I don't want to read all this to you because it just goes yammering. It's one of those type things. But I'm looking through here, finding anybody, populations of Asia moving into the New World. Let's see, neutral theory, if you know what that is. Syria, Mongolia. Middle East to the western edge of the Eurasian continent, north to Crimea, east to Mongolia, and southward through Nubia and Somalia, plus examples from North Africa and representative of Niger-Congo, speaking of sub-Saharan Africa, Table 1. Teeth and the tooth-bearing parts of facial skeletons do reflect differences in response to four skeleton populations, but they were left out of our analysis. In other words, there are people so far out in left field they are not in our analysis, and guess who those people were? Right, and they tell you how it relates to the Eurasian continent and shows you the graph here and how it pulls in. It has nothing to do with it, nothing to do with it. We're not even going to spend time doing it. You can go onto the site here and look at it. We're just going to go on. There's also the study titled HLA Genes in Macedonians and the Sub-Saharan Origin of the Greeks by Arnaiz Vilandrotowski. Surprisingly, the study was funded by Spanish Ministry of Education. And again, it doesn't have anything to do with that. It has Horn and Cape Caucasians that are found even in the Hofmeyr sites at 40,000 BC that are said to be not like the Negroid population in the area, which is Khoisan style and not related even to the West African Negroes that like to tout this stuff. But the study above and the others scattered through the site should not be construed to mean that the bulk of modern white researchers and historians are any less racist than the former were. Really? And are blacks any less racist than they were just a few generations ago? For just a few generations ago, they knew they weren't going to say some crap like this. One of the favorite tools of the modern racist is to researchers and historians are just more subtle in their racism. One of the favorite tools of modern racist is the term Indo-European. He's going to touch it. Anyone has ever opened an encyclopedia has seen people from India to Anatolia and all over Europe described as Indo-Europeans or Proto-Indo-European. That's because we can't use the word Aryan anymore, and that they all contained a blue-eyed, blonde-haired component. Not that they were all blonde-haired and blue-eyed, and they never would have been. Again, I want to interject, even people in Denmark have multiple colored eyes and hair. From brown to blonde to red. It's just certain populations have higher amounts, and they're able to get in there and check it out. All these things are non-Negroid traits of any human on the planet. So we're not going to try to say they came from him, but oh yeah, he is. He tries. From previous programming, we have been taught to think white all over Europe, and when we hear European, so then Indo-European. We must mean something that whites and Asian Indians, right? And since we know that Asian Indians are in India, then we must mean that all others are white, right? No, that's not really what it is. If you'll look, there's Denisovans mixed with the southern part of India, and they have a lot darker skin, but they're still Caucasians. Same thing with like Fiji Islanders and stuff like that, but they have a lot of it in them. And even the Negroids out of Aborigines in Australia are not related to West African Negroes. The Khoisan aren't either. Almost as far apart, really, as you would say people in London and people in China. But it's a totally different thing. It's that's not even a good picture, but yeah, almost, yeah. You get somebody to admit that did genetics. As you see from one example, modern whites are just as vile and petty in their racisms as those before, just more subtle. Well, who's being vile and petty and lying and covetous? But what does the term really mean? See the Aryan section below for an explanation. Oh no. The Spirit Cave mummy is the oldest mummy found in North America. It was discovered in 1940 in Spirit Cave, 13 miles east of Fallon, Nevada, by the husband and wife archaeological team of Sydney and Georgia Wheeler. In 1994, University of California, Riverside anthropologist Irv Taylor examined 17 of the Spirit Cave artifacts using mass spectrometry. It's cracker magic. And the results indicated that the mummy was approximately 9,400 years old, older than any previous known North American mummy. Further study determined that the mummy exhibits Caucasoid characteristics resembling the Ainu. Although a definitive affiliation has not been established, there's also a possible link to Polynesians, Australasians, and that is stronger than any Native American culture. And this is before they had found Kennewick Man and so on. And just recently, they found a whole nother set of them that predate any of the Bering Strait situation from in the last ice age. And I've done 2 videos on it. One was a reveal, and the other one was more information as I looked up and found more that I thought was really worth saying. But yeah, and no, they're not Icelandic and Ice Age Negroes running around. They pretty much had to stay right there at the equator when that crap was happening. And what most people don't realize is when that was happening, Europe was squinched down, and everybody you think of that's up north now, and Russians and everything, were much farther south. Sure, they fought into the edges of it, and mammoths and everything, and ivory, but we'll get to that later. So, note, Polynesian is a term that the Albino people have applied to Pacifians, Austronesians, who have significant white Mongol European admixture. Yeah, they do. They reserve the term Melanesian for the original pure black Pacificans. No, it's not that. Australians who have resisted admixture. No, they're not Negroids, and they're not even really black people. They're dark-skinned, and the India people and Fiji and so on are actually more Caucasian. Much, much more Caucasian. And really no West African Negroid in them whatsoever. Oh, it might confuse people just to see somebody like that. I think he shows a picture shortly. So just who are the Ainu? They are used are they used to indicate whiteness? The Ainu are an ancient black people. No, they're not black at all. They're an ancient Caucasian people who were part of the second out of Africa migration that went into China circa 50,000 BC. Another people who were part of that event, the Jomon, immigrated to Japan about 35,000 BC, and the Ainu followed about 13,000 BC. By then, the Ainu might have been admixed to some degree. See below. Yeah, so he's like, oh, they no, they weren't. There's no showing of any of that, but they want to. I'll show you a picture. He tries so hard after looking through lots of them. The Ainu followed about 13,000 BC, and then with modern Japanese who arrived in Japan about 350 BC. To the point of extinction, the Ainu almost went out doing. See anything white about the Ainu man below? Let's see. Do you see anything that tells you that's not an admixed Caucasoid in some race, form, or structure? There's not natural black people that look like that. What are we to say? He's got polished pearl buttons and stuff here. I don't know what age we can put it at. 1950, 60? Is this a black man hanging out in Japan during the service or something? Who knows what this picture is? One thing's for sure, the Ainu aren't black people. Then Andaman Islanders, and if you look at them, I think this is a guy. are genetically very close to the Ainu people. No, there's some cross with them, and the mix with that is that Denisovan blend and the other Caucasian blend that they have. Not Negroid. Not Negroid. Oh, wait, that's a woman. Kennewick man, also, here if you look, Jean-Luc Picard himself, whose 9,300-year-old remains were found in Washington State, was given a white-looking bust and similarly called Ainu-looking. And so this is what the Ainu look a little more like. But also the cranial form shows up to that. And if you look at the structures, which we did in just a video here with 7 Phoenician 7 stuff, the cranial forms scale way off for black people. Somehow people just, if black people see anybody with a tan or dark skin, they're like, wheeze. And it's like, no. And they just want the skin to be darker on this. Just like the statue of Nefertiti, they kept griping that shouldn't she be darker? No. But is this the color of his skin, or if he got out in the sun, would he tan? Oh, hell yeah, he'd tan. It's that magic adaptable melanin, you know. Of course, the average person has no idea of what an Ainu looks like. Of course they don't. Black people don't either. Nor their genetic makeup or their history. And no, black people wouldn't know that at all either if it wasn't for Caucasians and the Asians studying it. So the Caucasoid tag sticks. Well, of course it does. Different methods, but the intent is the same. Vile racism. Oh, now it's racist if you don't include black people in cultures they never were in. No, that's not true. In fact, it's not racist to correct black people whenever they're making their own racism up. You see. Similar tactics are used with the ancient Mississippi people in central United States who are not black. Here there are lifelike artifacts which clearly show them to be black people, but as with the Olmecs in Mexico, who are not black, and I've made a video that shows you a guy that's down there as a tour guide, and he looks just like the damn statues, and he has nothing to do with black people whatsoever. And a few people have made different ones of people they just found that look like them. But black people want to say, oh, look, they've got braided hair. And it's like, oh, now you're going to claim braids are black people? Right. Modern white researchers and historians are so deeply racist that they can't bring themselves to admit it, proving that racism in all vileness is a sickness. And what I'd like to say now is that the sickness is this Negroid mentality, this inferiority complex run wild with this delusions of grandeur situation going on and everything else. They can't realize that they're in a white civilization now and that they didn't have something to do with it. And they start grasping out, and of course they don't like West Africa at all. So they end up doing this, and this is one of many foolish joke things that they've come up with that really need to stop, because believe it or not, they actually believe this and get all riled up and cause racism and problems and all kinds of things. It's terrible. It's a sickness. Perhaps embarrassed by comments, 6 years later, this update was published. Year 2000, research finds in craniometric analysis mummy close to Norse Europeans followed by Ainu. So somehow they were embarrassed and had to go black with it, so then they said they were closest to Norse Europeans. How can he put this together by just trying to, is that it? You know, you just go stupid right there, where when it says, oh, it looks like Norse people, so they were black, so Norse were black. You can't cognate. A complete reading of the final report on spirit cave mummies, cultural racial affiliation via craniometric analysis by Jans and Olsey suggested their analysis showed the spirit cave cranium closest to North and Ainu. Oh, Norse and Ainu, those Nordic North people. Should be noted that the probability for Norse was 8-4 and Ainu in even lower probability. So now he's saying, well, that's just them covering up that they were blah, blah, blah. You know, and that's not the way it works again either. Anyone doubting the raceness, sickness, affiliation of these people should read above paragraph 100 times more. Perhaps then it would sink in. Norse Europeans with a probability. What that number means is that there's no probability for Norse Europeans or Anu, but they did manage to get you thinking in that direction. See how it works? Yeah, we see how it works. genetics and craniometry, telling you which ones they're closest to and who isn't involved, and we can see how you're affected by that. But you'll notice that they just didn't bring themselves to admit that they were black people. Sick, really sick. No, it's sick, really sick to try to say they were black people whenever they're not, and to try to claim anything but that. Okay, look, I'm going to give you another one. Let's just have this pretend world just for a moment. We're going to do magic mirror and go into pretend world, right? In that pretend world, black people came out all over the place, but they weren't the West African primitives, because those were the primitive, pre-Stone Age level, illiterate, least advanced people on the planet that we've ever found, counting out Amerindians and Eskimos. And they have the lowest IQ on the planet too. And they weren't involved with anything out here whatsoever, and don't seem to be genetically involved with much of anybody except for themselves. And that's a big mess too, because they were all tribal and just back and forth and capturing each other and stuff. It's kind of disgusting, and we won't go into that, but let's continue. Anyone doubting this racist sickness, no, I'm sorry, that's that. Also note, all ancient skeletons and mummies' DNA are tested, but the results are rarely published. And the very few that are published give only mDNA data, which is not very useful without the Y DNA of the males. That withholding of information gives them free rein to make these racist analysis comments. He doesn't understand how genetics works, that even though you're looking at mDNA, you can see if it's an admixed person in some way, shape, or form. And that he's trying to say, oh, they were white women, but we black men, ooh. And here we go, coveting others again. Kind of disgusting. Here's what they were hiding. Oh my God. Dark-skinned people who were shoving arrows up the asses of weasels. Oh my God, they're hiding primitives. So by the time we came over and we were able to make this type of art, they were still just bow and arrow going on. And they're supposed to say that, but of course it says Indians. And here's an Indian in blackface. Oh no. So, was? Oh my gosh, a dark-skinned Caucasian almost looking guy with a fro, kind of weird looking. And a lady pointing at him like, that ain't no West African Negro. Also, just look at the coat. That's like a leopard skin. So who is this supposed to be depicting? Where do leopards come from? Let's continue. I don't even want to justify that crap. Let's go on. Oh my God, we hit cheddars. We was cheddars. We were cheese and stuff. The first ancient Britons had black skin. No, if you're looking at this, it's brown skin, and there are Caucasians that do get this dark, but they admitted within a week they had made a mistake whenever they tried to put this out, and black people lost their mind. This is a Caucasian that grows facial hair. Normal Negroes don't. They have to have admixed to do so. He also has straight and somewhat hair, but they made it look unkempt because he's a caveman. He has blue eyes, a non-prognostic jaw, and he has nothing to do with that whatsoever. Neither does Brahman or any of the other ones. But was Kang. Okay, say, here we go again. Let's get back in that magic mirror. One black person made it up here. Do they see anything or genetics that show anything or any black people? No. Do they see genetics from this guy? Oh yeah, they see that, but none of those people have anything black to do with them either. So he died about 10,000 years ago. The bones are the oldest near complete skeleton ever found in Britain. But they found a bunch of other bones and stuff that goes back older than that and got genetics out of it. But was first? Not 10,000 BC? No. How did Northern Europeans evolve to have light skin? We're not going to even go into this because I've shown a video here recently where light skin genes go back 600,000 BC. And they're a blanket over Europe, it appears, and all the people and all the genetics they found out of these at some 60,000 BC. The oldest Negroid skeleton ever found is 4,500 BC. That's it. And they have a proto-Negroid that goes back, the oldest one they ever found is 9100 BC, and they haven't found anybody other than that. Any of these other creatures they keep talking about, and hominids and everything else, has nothing to do with black people. Or maybe it does, but it doesn't have anything to do with Caucasians then. There's only a couple that do have to do with both. And it goes way, way back. It's not like popcorn, there's a black man. And it's not like black man had an albino kid and all of a sudden now he's not Negroid at all. He's got Neanderthal DNA and wee. That's foolish. Quite foolish. So, yeah, here they talk about 8,500 years ago, these hunter-gatherers that lived in there, and that genetic from those people is what spread, and that's the ancient Aryans of Europe, and has nothing to do with black people whatsoever. But then he comes down here, and even though they cut it down to that level, he says the albinos always lie, just as the albinos were lying before with their first mock-up of Cheddar Man, which showed him as an albino. And it didn't show him as an albino, it showed him as a less dark Caucasian, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's what he was. And again, with their assertion that Cheddar Man had straight hair and blue eyes, these two attributes were falsely added to indicate some commonality with European albinos. No, they find the locus in his genes, or they wouldn't have told you that they did. But black people can't have that. Whitey Cracker Magic, no. Adaptation of human skin color. And if you look, he's marked out a whole lot of spots here. I think it's really just references and so on, but it's talking about all these locus genes, but which could be clear signal of positive selections of Europeans. The derived allele frequencies at these loci are high in Europeans, but low in Africans, and you're talking about Caucasian Africans, not even Negroids. They're disseminating that. The Negroid thing is way out of the question. But then, which could, and Africans and East Asians, right? Which could be clear signal of positive selection in Europeans as indicated by statistical analysis. So in other words, people, even in other areas, are selecting certain people, which they still do today, but don't want to admit it. But they don't want to select their own. The part underlined in green above is their way of saying that albino Europeans choose to mate among themselves because they are preferred to blacks. This from scientists, which all typical of European albinos. They can't help but lie about themselves to build themselves up. Let me rephrase that. The part underlined green above is their way of saying that Caucasian Europeans choose to mate among other Caucasians and don't want to mate amongst primitives, especially ones that have a mentality of like this, and it's been proven by scientists, and also in a mental, psychological, physical, and genetic way, which is all typical of European Caucasians because they rule the world and they herald in mankind, and other people just can't handle the fact that they didn't quite even have it going and still apparently have a problem. They can't help but lie about themselves, these black people, to build themselves up. Moving on to the original black cultures of Eastern Europe and Asia. Where are we at now? Getting close to 30. We'll continue. The Kostinki sites in Russia. This is a site that goes back 34,000 BC in a group of more than 20 settlements from the same culture on the right bank of the Don River. These Danites and Don, and that has to do with Proto-Indo-European languages too, by the way. South Voronezh. The basic excavations were conducted in the 1920s and 30s by Yefenko, in the 40s and 60s by Rakev. Now, the villages of Kostinki and Borshevko contain 5 cultural layers. In the upper layer were preserved the remains of dwellings with hearths, located among the central longitudinal axis of the dwellings, together with storage pits, flint tools, hoes made of mammoth tusks, bone digging implements, a baton made from deer horn, so this might have even been a scepter type of thing, and about 40 female statuettes made from both ivory and marl limestone, so white stones, figures of a bear, cave lion, and anthropomorphic marl heads. Triangular flint tools are found in the lowermost layer with a concave base retouched with a pressure process. So this is the cherting and the flinting and so on going on. And if you'll look at this guy over here to the left, that's Lou Ferrigno, the Hulk, and he's not black. Well, no, that's Stinky Man at 35,000 BC. Yeah, and he has a little of that brow ridge, a little bit larger features on him and stuff, but they try to do that to make it look a little more caveman. They've exaggerated a little bit, but then again, that's Lou Ferrigno, the Hulk. The Jamyanita site were found the remains of a round dwelling made of mammoth bones, 7 or 8 meters across, with a fireplace in the center, and it's badass. In fact, in my D&D game that we play, they've made recreations of this in this ice dwelling area of these ancient primordials we have to fight against. I should almost have that in this video right now. It's pretty cool. But they show all these mammoth horns that are all pulled together with skins and stuff, and that's how these people made their original huts and everything, and they also had boats and such going on already at this time. Anyhow, there was preserved in the uppermost layers remainders of 2 round dwellings, 6 meters in diameter, the hearth at the center of those. Among the findings were drilled discs of slate. Drilled discs of slate. Among the findings were drilled discs of slate. In the bottom layer, there were 2 long dwellings with a length of 34 centimeters and 23 meters, 34 meters and 23 centimeters, and a width of 5.5 meters, in which were found flint leaf-like tips, processed in pressure retouching, the flinting, the cherting. In the second layer, they found fragments of human bones partially burnt, as well as flint miniature plates, microliths, so this is cherting off pieces, and needle-shaped points, burins. Now it's a needle-shaped point. It's used for showing you that they already at this point started stitching animal skins together and doing things like that, using sinews. A lot of things probably getting past that point, starting it there, and it's before fabrics, though, of course. Because Stinky came no less than 5 cultural layers. In the upper layer, the remains of a round dwelling 9 meters in diameter, made of those mammoth bones, were discovered. 2 layers were interesting finds of triangular flint tips. Analogous were found in the lower ranges again, so they said it again. Contained 4 cultural layers. So here they are going through Stinky 9, 8, 7 up through, and then now they go 10, 11, 14, 15. At Kostinki, the ochred burial of a child about 6 years was found, with this burial were flint and bone tools, over 150 drilled teeth of the Arctic fox. Right? And they had necklaces with them and all this ivory and stuff that goes back from it. And this is a red ochre burial, buried on their left-hand side, facing to the east. And it's a primordial womb and a rebirth situation they had going on back then. Borshinfo contained 3 cultural layers dated from the end of the late Paleolithic through to the Mesolithic. In top layer, the camp of a temporary settlement of horse hunters. Mammoth bones were absent, but there were reindeer bones, the flint tools, which the microlith type, which could have been used for arrowheads. And so they already had that type tech going on. And here we see the Venus statues, and it's not at all like the Venus statue or the Venus that's the Negroid one they showed. In fact, here, look at the butt on this one, how it just comes out and around, and their legs are fat, and she's fat, and most of them are slightly pregnant, right? And they've got big hanging boobs like a pregnant mother. This is a mother situation. Has nothing to do with black people, and they're all made out of white stone and ivory. And he calls it Blacks of the far north, Scandinavia, and Siberia. Wow. I think we're going to have to kick it off here, but let's see. He's got to throw it in there, keeping in mind that the first humans everywhere were black Africans. And we find that we've just now accepted the fact of started calling actual Africans humans. And I know people don't want to admit things like that, but it is a fact. And to do so, we had to go and re-interject what constitutes modern humans. But so here, we'll end with a good thing here. Earlier hunter-gatherers, 7,000 years ago, Labrana man carries ancestral alleles in several skin pigmentation genes, suggesting that the light skin of modern Europeans was not yet ubiquitous in the Mesolithic. Oh no, so this guy might have been tan whitey? Yep, it sure does. And Ubiquitous means present, appearing, and found everywhere, or no, it's quite evident. It's all over the place. And then divergent, tending to be different or develop in different directions. Right, seems to be an offshoot. Definition of extant is, here's a cute albino word to play confuse people. The usual definition of extant is still in existence, surviving. Yeah, that's it. Extant means they're the ones that made out of it. Extinct is the ones that didn't. Somebody didn't go to school, maybe, I don't know. But the original manuscript is no longer extant. So synonyms still existing in existence, existent, surviving, remaining, undestroyed. Right, okay, so I think he's got a problem with that. The above definition of extant does not sound like they're saying whites, albinos were the first. Yeah, they do. Currently are actually existing. Yeah, they are. After reading the entire study, the author's scientific point is that Labrana 1 is different from current modern albino Europeans. Yes, he's different than any albino in the world because he doesn't have the genetic mutation of an albino that's more prevalent in Negroes than it is even in Caucasians, and except for they eat them there. Still to this day, they think they're magic, Whitey's magic, see, and they want to eat them, see if they can clean something out of it. It's really, and it still goes on. It's disgusting. They're wearing new clothes in that area, but that's about it. But yeah, so oddly, what is different from current modern albino Europeans is a few things about his genomes, and he may have had a more Mediterranean olive skin, which is not really shown up in the area where this skeleton is. And they just pointed that out, and he goes, oh, they're black. You know, it's like, no. But being albinos, they just couldn't resist the urge to stick in just a word or two that would suggest that there were whites, albinos in Europe before the modern era. Caucasians were here, and always were, and they predate any Negroid on the planet by so long, it's not even funny. See the migration period of Germanic Slavs and Turks. Found 7,000-year-old Mesolithic sample was divergent from the extant European populations. It's a little different than exactly that area they found him in. Ancient Scandinavian specimens. Boy, that's got to be black, huh? Support that Malta is significantly closer to Labrana than Asians or modern Europeans. Malta. So now Malta's got to be black. Oh my God, he said Venus figurines, and Venus figurines, since they're all ivory and they're just fat white people, they were black. No. Oh, here's Labrana, man. Oh, he looks like some of the actors you see today, especially if you shave the guy and gave him a haircut. Amazing. This is what the silly forensic, the albinos, came up with to show that Labrana might have looked. Please note that it looks quite different from the Karstinki and Singer busts, which were more serious, less racist attempts at truthful depictions of the ancient black people. No, what we're looking at here is somebody that's 7,000 BC versus, 38,000 BC, and a lot less Cro-Mag, huh? And a lot less Neanderthal, huh? Although the other guy only had like 2.4% Neanderthal had mixed back then. This guy's probably got similar, I don't know, because most people, it became a blanketer in the whole area because they're all the same people, and none of them are black. Isn't that special? That's special. Okay, we're going to end this one here, guys, and we'll go on to part 6 coming up shortly. And it'll be up there in your top corner. Like, share, and subscribe. Click that button. Peace.